34 years old. I'm out of shape. I've finally figured out a health problem that's plagued me for over a decade. And now I'm training to qualify for the Olympic Trials Marathon in 2028. Let me explain. In 2012, I qualified for the Olympic Trials in the 1500 meters, but I didn't compete. I didn't step on the starting line. I didn't even make the trip out to Eugene. That year, I was in my senior year at Virginia Tech. It was a groundbreaking year for me. I broke a 35-year-old school record in the 1500, running 3:39. I finished 4th at the NCAA championships, and it looked like I was on my way to a successful running career. But in the midst of all that success, things had started to go downhill in other ways. GI troubles, which I'd always struggled with to some degree, but I had mostly kept at bay, suddenly just started to overwhelm me. I'd get completely exhausted during the day, no matter how much sleep I got. Training started to wear on me in a way that it hadn't before. Like I wasn't recovering from the workouts, I wasn't able to handle the training load that I was able to just in the years prior. And to top it off, I could not focus in school. No matter what I did, couldn't focus in school, my grades slipped. After that season, I had one extra year of eligibility left at Virginia Tech, so I came back and finished it out, but all those problems just got worse and worse. And other than our team winning the ACC cross-country title that year, which I'm tremendously proud of, it was a waste of a year. I felt like shit. I ran like shit. I felt like my life was falling apart. Pro agents and sponsors were no longer interested. Most wouldn't even return my calls. I can't really blame them after that year I just had, but it was pretty disappointing at the time. But thankfully, my prior success earned me a spot in the pro running group Furman Elite, led by two-time Olympian in the steeplechase Robert Gary. I threw myself into my training that year. I wasn't sponsored, so I worked my days at Fleet Feet Greenville, shoe store here in South Carolina. And from a training perspective, things were okay. I mean, I was getting in shape again. And yet internally, that same struggle that I was having before, that same struggle remained. I was having trouble getting through the days, just dragging through every day. In training, I'd have a great workout, only to follow it up with a complete dud. It was so inconsistent. Racing-wise, I actually ran my PR. I ran my 1500 PR, I ran 3:37, finishing with a big kick, winning the race. But that was in the midst of a horrible season. Multiple, 350 1500s, 408 miles, DFLs, that's dead fucking last for those who don't know. And I totally bombed out at the US Championships in the prelim in the 1500 meters that year. Wasn't even close to making the final, which I had made all the way back in 2011. I just felt terrible. After that track season, I finally decided to seek some help. So I went to a doctor that knows high-level athletes. He'd worked with some studs, way higher level than me. He knew what he was doing. I know this sounds bad, like I was going to a doctor to run faster, but it wasn't anything like that. I was going and just being like, hey, I feel terrible. Can you help me? He ran some tests, evaluated everything. Finally, he started to focus on the gut, which made perfect sense. I had had some level of gut problems pretty much my whole life. I was lactose intolerant as a baby. I had chronic ear infections. I was on a lot of antibiotics, acid reflux problems. So this all made sense. Everything he was saying sounded spot on, like perfectly described my symptoms. So he gave me a 12-week protocol and I jumped right in. And 12 weeks later, nothing. No change at all, not even a hint of improvement. It was devastating. Thinking that I had the answer and then just winding up with zero improvement whatsoever, it was horrible. It was devastating. So we moved on. I did the protocol, I did what he said, and then it didn't work, so we moved on. That couldn't be the answer. In the next couple years leading into 2016, I did everything I could to try to figure everything out. We went through the ringer. I tried bunch of different diets, looked at my thyroid, all my hormones, did sleep tests, even got treated for Lyme disease in that time, none of which fixed any of my symptoms. Still dragging through the days, still exhausted, still training poorly, still nonstop GI distress. And by 2016, my time had run out. I could not train at nearly a high enough level to even qualify for the Olympic trials that summer, and I walked away from the sport for what I thought was for good. In the ensuing years, I moved on from my own running. When you're working so hard at something and yet you're feeling awful all the time, you're not having anywhere close to the results that you want, it's kind of hard to resist just leaving it behind, just totally walking away. So that's what I did. I didn't even contemplate making a return to running. I was done. I got in the gym more, packed on a little bit of weight, aka thought I was putting on muscle and pretty much just put on a bunch of fat. Overall, just started trying to live a normal life. But honestly, that normal life just eluded me. All those same problems that I was having before, all those same problems persisted. And at this point, I wasn't thinking, I need to fix this so that I can run fast. I was just thinking, I need to fix this so that I can be normal, so that I can live a normal life. I remember thinking around that time, 2016-ish, maybe if I step away from all the hard training, I had gone through the ringer with all this health stuff, maybe if I just, get away from training and stop training so hard, stop beating my body down so much, maybe all this will improve. And unfortunately, that was not the case. Months and ultimately years of zero running did Absolutely nothing. I just got worse and worse. Now, let me bring you to the present. Last year, 2023, I really recommitted to trying to figure all this stuff out. I had kind of just buried it deep down after a while. You know, that's what you do when you have something so chronic. What are you supposed to do? Sit there and complain about it all day? I had really just tried to bury it down and live as normal a life as I possibly could. But, you know, that only works for so long. And last year, 2023, after a lot of trial and error, I started to figure some things out, started to get a little bit closer. And ultimately, I came back to right where I was over 10 years ago. Something is wrong with my gut. Now, I'm not going to get too specific with it. I hate doing that, but the reality is I don't 100% know exactly what's going on. I don't have like a positive test or like a scan that shows you exactly what's going on. I just know that what I'm doing currently, my current protocol, is making me feel a ton better. That trial and error stuff I talked about last year, I tried a bunch of different things. I mean, really, some pretty extreme stuff. Ultimately, that wound up sidelining me through the fall and winter. I mean, I was completely knocked on my ass. That wound up ultimately kind of leading me to figuring all this stuff out. You know, when you have a response to something, whether it's good or bad, that tells you something. You know, I've kind of treated myself like a sort of science experiment. Like, something helps you, okay, write that down. I need to figure out what the links are between the things that help me. If something makes you worse, write that down. Need to figure out the links between the stuff that makes me worse. And now, I'm on my way, man. It sure ain't perfect or really anywhere close to that yet, but I am on my way. I mean, I am seeing some light at the end of the tunnel, which just feels incredible to be able to say. Like, I can't tell you in a video like this how many avenues I've been down over the last 10 plus years trying to figure this whole thing out. I mean, this video would be hours and hours long if I really went in depth with it. And to finally see some light at the end of the tunnel, man, feels incredible. Really does. And this brings us back to why I'm even making this video. I feel way better now. I feel more normal, and I'm incredibly grateful for it. There's still a long way to go, but I see a light at the end of the tunnel. And thus, I want to double down on my comeback to running. There's two big reasons for this. The first is I just want to see what my healthy body can do. I know I'm older now. I'm 34. I'd be a senior citizen in like a 1500 meter race. But 34, that's not that old for the marathon. And I've got 4 years to make it happen. 4 years till the Olympic trials 2028. And I feel better than I have in over a decade. Runs are feeling better. I feel better outside of running. So I want to test my limits, see where I can go, and I want to get to that starting line in 2028. It's going to be a journey, man. I mean, 8 years of essentially no running takes its toll. I started coming back last year again as I posted some videos on it, but just ultimately crashed and burned. Now I understand more why. I looked at Strava and tallied it up. I ran 316 miles in 2023. That's less than a mile a day. That ain't gonna cut it. But now I believe with a healthy body, I believe I can make it happen. Now the second reason for this comeback is much more personal to me. And as much as I thank God for all the stuff I've talked about in this video, this part is bigger. I have children now. My wife and I, we have a son who's about 1.5 years old. We just had our daughter back in February. Having kids has me thinking about what I want to impart on them. Like what I want to give them that's bigger than just money or things. I'm confident in my ability to teach them things like discipline, dedication, hard work, setting big goals, you know, all that stuff. But there's one thing I don't have that confidence in. Back in 2012, I made the Olympic trials. I qualified. All I had to do was step on the starting line, get on the plane, step on that starting line, and I would have competed at an Olympic trials. I didn't appreciate that enough at the time, but it's true. And I didn't. I didn't follow through. And in doing so, I let down my coach, I let down my teammates, I let down friends, family, those that believed in me, and I let myself down. I know, as I said here today, I know I was having some health problems. I know, like, all that is looking so much more clear now that I know what I know now. But nonetheless, it just left a hole. I mean, what is all that hard work, all that sacrifice, all that dedication? What is all that if you don't actually follow through on what you said you were gonna do? So when I look at my kids, I think, how can I impart on them? How can I teach them to follow through on their goals, their dreams, their commitments? How can I impart that on them without having done it myself? My words would just be empty, you know, all talk, no action. So I want to change that. I want to show my kids that their dad can set big goals, be disciplined every day in going after them, and ultimately follow through on those goals. And that's why in 2028, I will be on the starting line of the Olympic Trials Marathon, 16 years after I first qualified. It's time to follow through. There's a long road ahead of me, man. I know I have some talent, but the years have really added up since I retired. But with a healthy body, I believe there's nothing I can't do. That's where my confidence is at right now. I'm gonna make it happen. I'm gonna make the trials. I'm gonna follow through. I'm coming back from the dead.